Marcus rushed the pregnant woman to the hospital at midnight. The woman fainted during delivery and never spoke. But when the nurse gave Marcus the envelope after the birth, he was shocked because the check inside the envelope was for $10 million and the woman's identity was... The rain hammered against the windshield of Marcus Rivera's yellow taxi as he navigated through the crowded streets of downtown Chicago at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. After 20 years of driving nights in the city, Marcus had seen it all: drunk businessmen, crying teenagers, tourists who'd gotten lost, and everything in between. At 45, Marcus was a compact man with calloused hands and kind eyes that had witnessed more human drama than most people could imagine. He drove nights because the pay was better, and he needed every dollar to support his aging mother and pay for his daughter Isabella's college tuition. Marcus had just dropped off a fare at O'Hare Airport and was heading back into the city when his radio crackled to life. Car 847, we've got an emergency pickup. Pregnant woman in labor at the corner of Michigan and Randolph. She specifically requested you. Marcus frowned. He didn't remember ever having a regular passenger who was pregnant, and it was unusual for someone to request a specific driver, especially during an emergency. Copy that. Dispatch ETA, 3 minutes. Marcus hit his lights and carefully maneuvered through the late-night traffic. When he arrived at the specified corner, he found a woman leaning against a streetlight, clearly in distress. She was well dressed in an expensive-looking coat, but her face was pale and she was breathing heavily. "Ma'am, are you the one who called for a taxi?" Marcus asked, jumping out to help her. The woman looked up at him, and Marcus was struck by her eyes. Intelligent and desperate, but also somehow familiar, though he couldn't place where he might have seen her before. "Yes," she gasped between contractions. "I need to get to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Please hurry." Marcus helped her into the back seat, noticing that, despite her obvious pain, she carried herself with a certain dignity. Her clothes were clearly expensive, and she wore jewelry that suggested significant wealth. "When are you due?" Marcus asked as he pulled back into traffic. "The baby wasn't supposed to come for another 3 weeks," the woman replied, her voice strained. "But something's happening. The contractions started about an hour ago and they're getting stronger." "What's your name? I need to call ahead to the hospital." The woman hesitated for a moment. Sarah Johnson." Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror. The woman's pause and the generic nature of the name made him suspect she might not be telling the truth, but he wasn't about to interrogate a woman in labor. "Okay, Sarah, we'll get you there safely. Try to breathe slowly and stay calm." As they drove through the city, Marcus found himself stealing glances at his passenger. There was something about her that didn't quite add up. Her clothes and jewelry suggested wealth, but she was alone, taking a taxi to the hospital instead of riding in a private car or ambulance. She had no bag with her, no preparations for the hospital stay that most expectant mothers would have ready. "Is your husband meeting us at the hospital?" Marcus asked. "No," Sarah said quietly. "There's no husband. It's just me." Marcus felt a surge of sympathy. He had raised his own daughter largely alone after his wife died in a car accident, when Isabella was just 5 years old. He understood the challenges of single parenthood. "Well, you're not alone tonight," Marcus said gently. "I'll make sure you get the care you need." As they approached the hospital, Sarah suddenly cried out in pain, doubling over in the back seat. "I think the baby's coming now," she gasped. "I can't wait." "I can't make it to the hospital." Marcus felt his heart rate spike. He had no medical training beyond basic first aid, but he could see that Sarah was right. This baby was coming whether they were in a hospital or not. "Okay, Sarah, listen to me," Marcus said, pulling the taxi over to the side of the road and putting on his emergency flashers. "I'm going to call 911, but we need to be prepared to deliver this baby ourselves." Marcus called for an ambulance while helping Sarah lie down across the back seat. Within minutes, it became clear that the baby wasn't going to wait for professional medical help. "I can see the baby's head," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Sarah, you're doing great. On the next contraction, I need you to push as hard as you can." What followed was the most intense and miraculous 15 minutes of Marcus's life. With guidance from the 911 dispatcher on his phone, he helped deliver Sarah's baby right there in the back of his taxi. The baby, a beautiful little girl, came into the world with a strong cry that filled the taxi and made Marcus's eyes fill with tears. "She's perfect," Marcus said, carefully wrapping the baby in his jacket. "Sarah, you did it. You have a beautiful daughter." But when Marcus looked up to share the moment with Sarah, he saw that she had lost consciousness. The ambulance arrived just as Marcus was starting to panic about Sarah's condition. The paramedics quickly took over, stabilizing both mother and baby before rushing them to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Marcus followed in his taxi, unable to shake the feeling that he needed to make sure they were both okay. He had been present for this child's birth. He felt a connection to her that he couldn't explain. At the hospital, Marcus found himself in the surreal position of being the only person present who could provide information about the birth. Sarah was unconscious, and there was no family or friends present. "Sir, we need some information for our records," said Nurse Jennifer Walsh, a kind woman in her 50s who had been working in the maternity ward for over 20 years. "Are you the father?" "No, I'm just the taxi driver who brought her in," Marcus explained. "She went into labor in my cab, and I ended up delivering the baby." Nurse Walsh's eyebrows rose. "You delivered the baby? That's incredible. Do you have any medical training?" Marcus shook his head. "No, just 20 years of seeing all kinds of situations in this city, and some very helpful 911 dispatchers." "Well, you did an excellent job. Both mother and baby are stable. The mother is unconscious due to exhaustion and blood loss, but the doctors expect her to recover fully." Marcus felt relief wash over him. "That's good to hear. Has anyone else come to see them? Family? Friends?" Nurse Walsh shook her head. "No, and that's a bit unusual. Most women have someone with them when they give birth, especially first-time mothers." "How do you know she's a first-time mother?" "Just experience. You can usually tell. Plus, she seems very young, and there are no signs that she's had children before." Marcus nodded, but he was puzzled. Sarah had seemed older than a typical first-time mother, and there was something about her bearing that suggested she was used to taking care of herself. "Can I see them? The baby, I mean. I feel kind of responsible for her after delivering her myself." Nurse Walsh smiled. "Of course. She's in the nursery right now while her mother recovers." Marcus followed Nurse Walsh to the nursery, where he found himself looking through the glass at the tiny baby girl he had helped bring into the world. She was sleeping peacefully, wrapped in a pink blanket, completely unaware of the unusual circumstances of her birth. "She's beautiful," Marcus said softly. "She is," Nurse Walsh agreed. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Perfect health. She's lucky to have someone like you looking out for her." Marcus spent the next hour sitting in the waiting area, unable to leave until he knew that Sarah was awake and okay. He called his dispatcher to explain that he was dealing with an emergency and wouldn't be able to take any more fares that night. Around 3 a.m., Nurse Walsh found Marcus in the waiting area. "Mr. Rivera, the mother is awake now. She's been asking for you." Marcus followed the nurse to Sarah's room, where he found her sitting up in bed, looking tired but alert. She was even more beautiful than he had realized during the emergency, with dark hair and intelligent green eyes. "I wanted to thank you," Sarah said when Marcus entered the room. "The nurses told me what you did. You saved both our lives." Marcus felt embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what anyone would do. How are you feeling?" "Tired but grateful," Sarah said. "I understand you stayed here all night to make sure we were okay." "I couldn't leave until I knew you were both safe," Marcus said. "Is there anyone I can call for you? Family? Friends?" Sarah's expression grew sad. "No, there's no one to call. It's just me and the baby now." Marcus found this hard to believe. Sarah was clearly educated and well off. It seemed impossible that she had no one in her life. "What about the baby's father?" Marcus asked gently. Sarah's face hardened. "He made it clear that he wanted nothing to do with us. I'm better off without him." Marcus nodded, understanding that there was more to the story that Sarah wasn't ready to share. "Well, if you need anything at all, here's my card," Marcus said, pulling out one of his business cards. "I know this city like the back of my hand, and I know how to get things done when people need help." Sarah took the card and studied it. "Marcus Rivera, City Taxi Service." "Thank you, Marcus. You've already done more for me than anyone has in a long time." As Marcus was preparing to leave, Sarah called out to him. "Marcus, wait, there's something I need to give you." Sarah reached for her purse, which the paramedics had brought in with her, and pulled out a sealed envelope. "I was hoping I'd have time to arrange things properly, but the baby came early," Sarah said. "This is for you. Please don't open it until you get home." Marcus took the envelope, which felt substantial and important. "Sarah, you don't owe me anything. I was just doing what anyone would do." "Please," Sarah said, her eyes filling with tears, "just take it. And Marcus, would you mind checking on us in a few days? I have a feeling I'm going to need a friend." Marcus nodded, touched by her vulnerability. "Of course. I'll check on you both." Marcus drove home as the sun was beginning to rise over Chicago, exhausted but somehow exhilarated by the events of the night. He lived in a modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood, where he had raised his daughter Isabella after his wife's death. Isabella was now 22 and in her final year at Northwestern University, studying to become a social worker. Marcus was incredibly proud of her, though the cost of her education had stretched his finances to the breaking point. When Marcus arrived home, he made himself a cup of coffee and sat down at his kitchen table to open Sarah's envelope. Inside, he found a check that made him blink several times to make sure he was reading it correctly. $10 million. The check was made out to Marcus Rivera, and it was drawn on the account of Wellington Industries, a name that Marcus vaguely recognized as one of Chicago's largest corporations. Along with the check, there was a handwritten letter. "Dear Marcus, by the time you read this, you will know that I am not who I told you I was. My real name is Sarah Wellington, and I am the CEO of Wellington Industries. I chose to give birth anonymously because I wanted my daughter to come into this world away from the spotlight and complications of my public life. The money in this envelope is not payment for what you did tonight. What you did cannot be repaid with money. This is a gift because I believe you are exactly the kind of person who will use it to make the world better. I have been watching you for months, Marcus. After my car broke down 6 months ago and you drove me home, I was struck by your kindness and integrity. When you refused to accept more than the standard fare despite driving me far out of your way, I knew you were different. I had my assistant discreetly investigate your background, and I learned about your daughter, your sacrifices, and your character. I chose you to deliver my baby not by accident, but because I knew that if anything happened to me, you would be the kind of person who would care for an innocent child. My daughter will inherit everything I have built, but she will also inherit the loneliness and isolation that comes with extreme wealth. I am asking you to be a part of her life, not as an employee, but as a friend and protector. Use this money to secure your own future so that you can be free to help guide hers. I hope you will accept this gift in the spirit it is given, not as charity, but as an investment in the kind of world I want my daughter to grow up in. With gratitude and respect, Sarah Wellington." Marcus read the letter 3 times, his mind reeling. Sarah Wellington was one of the most powerful business leaders in Chicago, a woman whose picture regularly appeared in Forbes and Fortune magazines. And she had chosen him, a taxi driver, to be part of her daughter's life. Marcus looked at the check again. $10 million would change everything for him and Isabella. It would pay off her student loans, allow him to retire from driving nights, and give him the freedom to focus on what mattered most. But more than the money, Marcus was moved by Sarah's trust in him. She had observed him for months and decided that he was worthy of caring for her most precious possession, her daughter. Marcus picked up his phone and called the hospital. "Northwestern Memorial, maternity ward. This is Nurse Walsh." "Hi, this is Marcus Rivera. I brought in Sarah Johnson last night, the woman who gave birth in my taxi. I was wondering how she and the baby are doing." "Oh, Mr. Rivera, I'm so glad you called. I have some concerning news. Sarah checked herself and the baby out of the hospital about an hour ago, against medical advice. She said she had somewhere important to be." Marcus felt a chill of worry. Did she say where she was going? No, and that's what worries me. New mothers shouldn't be traveling so soon after giving birth, especially after what she went through last night. Marcus thanked Nurse Walsh and hung up, his mind racing. Why would Sarah leave the hospital so soon? And where would she go with a newborn baby? Marcus tried calling the number on Sarah's business card, but it went straight to voicemail. He left a message asking her to call him back, emphasizing that he was concerned about her and the baby's safety. When Sarah hadn't returned his call by evening, Marcus made a decision. He was going to find her. Marcus used his 20 years of experience navigating Chicago to track down information about Sarah Wellington. He started with the Wellington Industries headquarters, a gleaming skyscraper in the downtown financial district. When Marcus approached the security desk in the lobby, he was met with polite but firm refusal. "I'm sorry, sir, but Ms. Wellington is not available for meetings without an appointment," the security guard said. "And according to our records, she's currently on an extended leave of absence." Marcus tried calling Sarah's direct line at the company, but was told by her assistant that Ms. Wellington was taking time off for personal reasons and could not be reached. Growing more worried, Marcus decided to try a different approach. He drove to the address listed for Sarah Wellington in the phone directory and found himself outside a magnificent mansion in Lincoln Park, one of Chicago's most exclusive neighborhoods. The house was dark, with no signs of activity. Marcus sat in his taxi across the street for 2 hours, but saw no movement inside. Finally, Marcus approached the front door and rang the bell. After several minutes, an elderly man in formal attire answered. "May I help you?" the man asked, clearly puzzled by Marcus's appearance. "I'm looking for Sarah Wellington," Marcus said. "I'm a friend, and I'm concerned about her and her baby." The man's expression grew troubled. "I'm afraid Ms. Wellington is not here, sir. In fact, we haven't seen her for several days, which is quite unusual. May I ask who you are?" Marcus explained about the previous night's events, though he left out the details about the check and letter. The man, who introduced himself as Charles, the household manager, listened with growing concern. "This is very troubling," Charles said. "Ms. Wellington left specific instructions that she was not to be disturbed for any reason, but she has never disappeared like this before. And you say she had a baby last night?" Marcus nodded. "A little girl, beautiful and healthy. But Sarah left the hospital this morning against medical advice, and I'm worried about both of them." Charles was quiet for a moment, then made a decision. "Sir, I think you should speak with Dr. Martin Wesley. He's Ms. Wellington's personal physician and one of the few people she trusts completely." Charles gave Marcus Dr. Wesley's contact information, and within an hour, Marcus found himself in the doctor's office, explaining the situation once again. Dr. Wesley was a distinguished man in his 60s, who had clearly been Sarah's doctor for many years. His concern was evident as Marcus told the story. "This is very unlike Sarah," Dr. Wesley said. "She's always been extremely responsible about her health and safety. The fact that she would leave the hospital so soon after giving birth suggests that something urgent has happened." Dr. Wesley was quiet for a moment, then looked at Marcus seriously. "Mr. Rivera, I'm going to share some information with you that I normally wouldn't discuss with anyone outside the family. But given the circumstances and the fact that you were present for the birth, I think you need to understand what Sarah might be dealing with." Marcus leaned forward, listening intently. "Sarah Wellington has been receiving threats for the past several months," Dr. Wesley explained. "Someone has been demanding that she sell Wellington Industries, and when she refused, the threats became more personal. She hired security, but she's been living in fear." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "You think someone might have forced her to leave the hospital?" "I don't know," Dr. Wesley said. "But I do know that Sarah was planning to disappear for a while after the baby was born. She wanted to keep the child safe from anyone who might try to use the baby to manipulate her." Dr. Wesley pulled out a business card and handed it to Marcus. "This is Detective Lisa Rodriguez with the Chicago Police Department. She's been working on Sarah's case. I think you should talk to her immediately." Detective Rodriguez was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who had been investigating corporate threats and kidnapping cases for over 15 years. When Marcus explained the situation, she listened carefully and took detailed notes. "Mr. Rivera, you may have been the last person to see Sarah Wellington before she went into hiding," Detective Rodriguez said. "Can you think of anything she said or did that might give us a clue about where she planned to go?" Marcus thought back to his conversations with Sarah, trying to remember any details that might be helpful. "She seemed very concerned about being alone," Marcus said. "She mentioned that there was no one to call, no family or friends, but she also seemed like she was used to taking care of herself." Detective Rodriguez nodded. "Sarah Wellington is one of the most independent people I've ever met. She built Wellington Industries from almost nothing after her parents died in a plane crash when she was 25. She's been on her own for a long time." "What about the baby's father?" Marcus asked. Detective Rodriguez's expression grew grim. "That's part of the problem. The baby's father is Richard Blackstone, CEO of Blackstone International. He's been trying to acquire Wellington Industries for years, and when Sarah refused to sell, he apparently decided to try a more personal approach." Marcus felt sick. "You mean he got involved with her just to try to take over her company?" "That's what we believe. When Sarah discovered his true motives and broke off the relationship, Blackstone became increasingly aggressive. The threats Sarah has been receiving appear to be connected to him." Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. "Mr. Rivera, if Sarah has gone into hiding with the baby, she's doing it to protect her daughter from Blackstone. But she's also putting herself in danger by refusing police protection." Marcus pulled out Sarah's letter and showed it to Detective Rodriguez. "She left me this. I think she's been planning this for a long time." After reading the letter, Detective Rodriguez looked at Marcus with new respect. "Mr. Rivera, I think you may be the key to finding Sarah. She trusts you, and she's asked you to be part of her daughter's life. If anyone can convince her to accept help, it's probably you." Detective Rodriguez made some phone calls and within an hour had tracked down 3 properties that Sarah owned under various names. The third property, a small cabin in Wisconsin, showed recent activity. "Mr. Rivera, I know this is a lot to ask, but would you be willing to come with us to find Sarah? She might be more likely to trust you than a group of police officers." Marcus didn't hesitate. "Of course. Let's go find them." The cabin was located on a secluded lake about 2 hours north of Chicago. As they approached the property, Marcus could see smoke coming from the chimney and a car parked in the driveway. "She's here," Detective Rodriguez said. "Mr. Rivera, I want you to approach the cabin alone at first. We'll stay back unless you signal that you need help." Marcus walked up the gravel path to the cabin's front door, his heart pounding. He could hear a baby crying inside, and after a moment, he heard Sarah's voice trying to soothe her. Marcus knocked gently on the door. "Sarah, it's Marcus Rivera. I'm here to help." The crying stopped, and Marcus could hear footsteps approaching the door. "Marcus?" Sarah's voice was cautious. "How did you find me?" "I was worried about you and the baby. Detective Rodriguez helped me track you down. Sarah, we know about the threats. You don't have to handle this alone." After a long pause, Sarah opened the door. She looked exhausted and scared, holding her baby daughter close to her chest. "I don't know what to do, Marcus," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I could protect her by disappearing, but I realize now that I can't raise a child while constantly running and hiding." Marcus stepped forward and gently took Sarah's free hand. "You don't have to run anymore. Detective Rodriguez has a plan to keep you and the baby safe while they deal with Blackstone." "How can you be sure?" Sarah asked. Marcus smiled. "Because you're not alone anymore. You asked me to be part of your daughter's life, remember? I take that responsibility seriously." Marcus gestured toward the police cars. "Detective Rodriguez and her team are here to help. But more than that, you have me, and you have my daughter Isabella, and you have Dr. Wesley and Charles, and all the other people who care about you." Sarah looked at her baby, then at Marcus. "I've been independent for so long, I forgot what it feels like to have people who actually care about my well-being instead of my money." "Well, now you're going to learn," Marcus said gently, "starting with letting us help you handle this Blackstone situation properly." 6 months later, Richard Blackstone was in federal prison for corporate espionage, extortion, and making criminal threats. Sarah Wellington had not only kept control of Wellington Industries, but had expanded the company's charitable giving programs and employee benefits. Marcus had used Sarah's gift to pay off Isabella's student loans and start a scholarship fund for children of taxi drivers and other working-class families. He had also reduced his driving schedule to part-time so that he could help Sarah navigate the challenges of new motherhood. Sarah's daughter, whom she had named Grace Marcus Wellington, was thriving. She had become the center of an unexpected extended family that included Marcus, Isabella, Dr. Wesley, Charles, and even Detective Rodriguez, who had become a close friend. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Marcus found himself in Sarah's Lincoln Park mansion, watching Grace play with toys, while Sarah worked on her laptop nearby. "You know," Sarah said, looking up from her computer, I never imagined that the best thing that ever happened to me would start with going into labor in the back of a taxi." Marcus laughed. "I never imagined that delivering a baby would lead to gaining a new family." Isabella, who was visiting for the weekend, looked up from the book she was reading to Grace. "I think Grace is going to grow up thinking that all babies are delivered by taxi drivers." Sarah smiled. She could do worse than thinking that. Taxi drivers see the real world, they help people in crisis, and they have good judgment about human character. Marcus looked around the elegant room, still sometimes amazed by the turns his life had taken. But more than the financial security or the beautiful surroundings, he was grateful for the relationships that had grown from that one night of emergency. "Sarah," Marcus said, "I have a question for you." "What's that?" "How did you know to trust me, really?" "You observed me for months, but how did you know I was the kind of person you could count on?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "Do you remember the night you drove me home when my car broke down?" Marcus nodded. "When we arrived at my house, you noticed that I had left my purse in your taxi. You could have driven away and I never would have known. Instead, you brought it to my door and refused to accept any reward beyond the standard fare." Sarah picked up Grace and held her close. "But more than that, when you saw that I was upset about something, you didn't pry or ask invasive questions. You just told me that whatever I was dealing with, it would work out, and that sometimes the worst days lead to the best changes." Marcus remembered that night. Sarah had seemed sad and distracted, and he had sensed that she was dealing with something difficult. "You were right," Sarah continued. "That was one of the worst days of my life. The day I discovered what Richard was really after. But it led to the best change I could have imagined, becoming Grace's mother and gaining a family I never knew I needed." Marcus felt a familiar warmth in his chest, the same feeling he had experienced the night Grace was born. It was the feeling of being exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. "Well," Marcus said, "I guess it's true what they say. Sometimes the most important journeys begin with a simple taxi ride." Sarah laughed and handed Grace to Marcus, who had become the baby's favorite person after her mother. "No," Sarah said, watching Marcus expertly soothe the baby. "Sometimes the most important journeys begin when someone chooses to care about a stranger in need." As Marcus held Grace and looked around at the family they had created together, he understood that the real gift hadn't been the money in Sarah's envelope. The real gift had been the trust, the love, and the second chance at building something meaningful with people who truly cared about each other. And in a city of millions of strangers, that was the most valuable treasure of all. As we come to the end of Marcus and Sarah's incredible story, I want you to think about the profound lesson hidden in this tale. Sometimes the most life-changing moments begin with a simple choice to help someone in need, without expecting anything in return. Marcus could have just dropped Sarah off at the hospital and driven away. He could have refused to deliver the baby when there was no medical help available. He could have taken the money and disappeared, but instead he chose compassion over convenience, courage over comfort, and commitment over personal gain. And Sarah? She could have chosen anyone to be part of her daughter's life. Wealthy friends, business associates, people who moved in her social circles. Instead, she chose the person who had shown her genuine kindness without knowing who she was or what she could offer in return. This story teaches us that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the quality of relationships we build and the impact we have on other people's lives. Marcus was rich in character long before he received Sarah's check. Sarah was truly wealthy when she gained a family who cared about her as a person, not as a CEO. But here's what I find most beautiful about their story. Neither of them was looking for what they found. Marcus was just doing his job. Sarah was just trying to protect her baby, but because they both chose kindness, integrity, and authentic caring, they created something neither of them could have built alone. How many opportunities do we miss every day to be the Marcus in someone's story? How many times do we choose the easy path instead of the compassionate one? How often do we judge people by their circumstances instead of their character? If this story touched your heart, If it reminded you that small acts of kindness can lead to extraordinary transformations, please hit that like button right now. Share this story with someone who works in service industries, someone who goes out of their way to help strangers, someone who needs to be reminded that their everyday choices matter more than they know. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about the power of human kindness, the beauty of unexpected friendships, and the way that genuine caring can change everything, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Because here's what I believe with every fiber of my being: the world is full of Marcus Riveras, people who choose kindness over profit, who help without expecting reward, who see the humanity in every person they meet. And the world is also full of Sarah Wellingtons, people who are searching for authentic connection, who value character over status, who are waiting for someone to see them for who they really are. Be the taxi driver who stops to help. Be the person who chooses integrity when no one is watching. Be the one who believes that every human being has value, regardless of their circumstances. Because you never know when your simple act of kindness might be exactly what someone needs to change their life forever. You never know when your choice to care might be the beginning of something beautiful that you never could have imagined. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Thank you for believing in the power of human goodness and the beauty of unexpected blessings. Until next time, remember, you have the power to be someone's miracle, and they have the power to be yours. See you in the next story, where ordinary kindness creates extraordinary outcomes and strangers become family.